I'm Olivia. I'm the Witch of Wonderlust here on YouTube and on Instagram, and today I've got another over tea video for you. Now, I realize it's been a hot minute since we've done an over tea video, and if you're new to my channel, basically just grab a cup of tea or some coffee, anything you'd like to drink. I'm drinking this pumpkin Earl Grey tea by David's Tea. David's Tea is currently, and has been, my favorite tea brand for quite some time now. So originally I wasn't planning on doing a video at all for Halloween, mainly just because my life has been ridiculously crazy. All good things, but it's been a lot. Despite the fact of me really wanting to do some kind of extravagant video for you on Halloween, that's not gonna happen, so you get an over tea video. However, I do think that this video is highly requested, especially since last year when I went and helped Annie with her haunted table, as well as her most recent video talking about her haunted table and that whole situation. So I figured I would kind of go through and chat a little bit about these watcher spirits. Now, don't go expecting me doing a whole catalog on different spirits. Maybe that might be a thing, but that's not something I really plan to do at the moment. I'm by no means an expert. This is just my personal experience with these spirits and my personal experience on dealing with them. Let's start from the beginning. You know, what's interesting is recently, and more specifically right after Annie released her video talking a little more about the situation, I went through a box that my mom had found, and it's all these journals from when I was like 12 or younger, all the way up until probably 2017. They were journals and sketchbooks, and I found a sketchbook from when I want to say I had to have been 9 or 10. And it was these scribblings, and I saw this scribble, and I immediately remembered that it was because I kept feeling like I was seeing these things around me. And it's a very unnerving scribbling. Like it's very classic, like horror movie. This child drew this creepy drawing. It's kind of funny that it's like very on point for that, but it was just the best way that I could portray of what I felt like was following me around or was in a specific space that I was entering in. And I'll show you the drawing. So this is it. And it is real, like I said, it's very unnerving. It's kind of creepy. And I remember being unnerved, but not terrified, if that makes sense. I wasn't scared that these things were going to hurt me. It was just uncomfortable. So I think that that was my first actual interaction with these watchers. Again, I don't know if other people call them the same thing or whatever. That's just what I've called them. But that was kind of the first time. Then there were other times where I'm pretty sure there was one in my house for a very long time, actually, because this was prior to me actively practicing, and this was actually right up until the point I started practicing. So it was in my childhood home, and there was four bedrooms upstairs, and one of the bedrooms was like a guest bedroom. There was always this weird constricting, heavy feeling. And again, it wasn't scary, like I didn't feel terrified, it was just so uncomfortable. And so I think when you get uncomfortable, then you naturally feel like you should be scared, but I didn't feel like I was in danger. It was just more uncomfortable. None of my friends would ever sleep in that guest bedroom, and any guests that we did have that were adults usually would just sleep in there and then not really spend extra time in there. Fast forwarding until I was about 14, this is about a year-ish into my practice, my friends and I played this game, which I think would be fantastic to play with friends, family, whoever, coven mates, if you're kind of dabbling in spirit work, or at least just trying to be better about sensing spirits. My house, I believe, was very haunted, but not haunted in a way of like poltergeist or anything attention-seeking. I just knew that there were spirits there. There were a minimum of 5, at least, that I have confirmed, or at least confirmed for myself, that I believe in. And what we did, it was 2 of my friends, and they were spending the night, and we went through every room in our house And each of us had like a notebook or some pieces of paper. And without speaking to each other, we would go into each room and write down if we thought that there was a spirit there, what kind of energy it was giving, like masculine, feminine, if we thought it was a spirit of a past person or a spirit of something else, if we thought it was just an energy and not a spirit, what kind of personality we felt like the spirit had, what kind of name we would give the spirit, the age of the person, if it was a spirit of a person that had passed. So it was just more of that. And we went through not speaking to each other in each room. So we'd write down and then wait until everybody was done and then go to the next room. What was fascinating was that all 5 rooms or areas that I had always felt presence, they did too. And all of their explanations and their descriptions of this energy or of the spirits were not only similar, but almost exact as mine, both of theirs. And that was one of the first things that kind of spoke to me, that I was realizing that, oh, maybe I'm not just making this up in my head. Other people feel these things too. So when we got to that guest bedroom where nobody liked to stay, we all wrote down the same thing: heavy, uncomfortable, like this thing was just standing in the corner near the window, just watching. And it felt tall and lanky and just like dense. I don't know how else to, just dense, and hollowed eyes and a lot of breathing, as if it was trying to intake something. And so, of course, we spent very little amount of time in that room, and we ended up naming this spirit Zane. So around that time, my dad had a friend of his move in with us and stayed in that room. He was only there for a few months, but I didn't get a good gut feeling from him. This was the type of person that was just 3 degrees off. You just know that there's just something not totally right about this person, and all of my friends felt the same. He never did anything that I'm aware of, but I'm always trusting my gut feeling. We had a protector spirit. He would just linger in the hallway. We had a very long hallway through the whole upstairs, and he all of a sudden started stepping a lot louder than he usually did. So he would go up and down the stairs, he would go up and down the hallway, and you could just tell that he was aggravated while this person was staying with us. But then when he moved out a few months later, this protector spirit was fine and seemed content, and Zane was gone. So my theory now is that Zane was a watcher. I'm not really sure because he never really left that room, it seemed like. And maybe it was the protector spirit because, again, that protector spirit lingered those hallways, and in order for Zane to get out, it was through the hallways. So that is my first really interaction with a watcher that I can remember, other than just feeling these weird things following me around when I was traveling with my family when I was younger and made that drawing. Now we get a little more present. We get into, I don't know, I'm probably 19 or 20, and there's just multiple times. And more of these are more blips. They're not these significant pieces. And you can just tell because watchers are common, that I've noticed. They're not ridiculously common, but they are common. And it wouldn't surprise me if many of you, if not all of you, have ran into them at least a couple of times in your life. And maybe you didn't even know it. For the most part, watchers aren't dangerous inherently. And we'll get there in a second when we get to Annie's story. Especially after I started practicing a lot more intentionally and outwardly, when I was able to set up the larger protections that I could, I really didn't have issues with them. Then, a little more present, many of you may remember that I did the Hecate course with Jason Miller, and that was a boot camp for sure. That course was a lot energetically and magically. I was putting out and working a lot of magic, so the more you work, the brighter your beacon is in the spiritual realm, for lack of better terms. And this was a lot of work. It was an everyday thing. It was taxing. I really did notice quite the stir in not only just the spirits around me, but these spirits that didn't really seem to care about me or even notice me prior. And then all of a sudden I was putting out all of this energy and all of this magic, and these really interesting spirits started just flocking. And one of the most common spirits I was finding to flock to me were Watchers. And my theory about Watchers is that they are kind of like energetic leeches. I suppose you can say energy vampires if that is familiar to you, but I just can't get out of my mind like this gaping mouth trying to like suck energy like a leech or something, a suction cup on a window. And when I was doing the Hecate work, I swear I had a flock of them. I was closing all of my windows just because it was so uncomfortable. It felt like there were like 8 of them just pressed up against the window with their eyes just like gaping crevices and these like gaping mouths, desperate to get inside. And of course I have protections and wards up, so I don't think that they could pass that. And that's why they were just outside, but they were just, oh, it was just so creepy. It was so uncomfortable. And I always had my windows closed, which is very uncommon for me. I love natural lighting. But that was when I had to really understand how to get rid of them. And of course, it's just bigger banishings than your usual banishing. My personal banishing was taught to me that I will not be sharing, mainly because I'm asked not to, so I'm not going to. However, it's not really anything that's very specific or intense that takes to banish Watchers, but I will say I don't think beginners will have an easy time banishing them. It just means that you'll probably get a little more experience in getting rid of them. Will take a little bit more oomph than your usual just everyday banishing, but you don't need to be like traveling to crossroads and going to the cemetery and asking all of these spirits. So again, I just learned more in-depth banishings. I do have a video on Banishing 101 if you want to check that out as well. Many of the things that I point out there will be helpful for Watchers. It's nothing that I would suggest that you need any very experienced practitioner or a professional of any sort to get rid of. Like I said, they are pretty common. They're just uncomfortable. Now, we roll up to last year when I helped Annie with her haunted table. And at this point, I had become so accustomed to Watchers. They show up when I do a lot of rituals, a lot of spells. They show up a lot when I'm doing just more magic than usual. And I've noticed that when my usual magic threshold goes higher, they show up. But if it stays here and I keep banishing, they tend to just leave me alone because it's almost like they're getting used to the brightness of the beacon, if that metaphor still stands. So the more magic I continuously do and am used to doing, the brighter my beacon gets, the more accustomed they become to it. Of course, every time it does get brighter, they come flocking and I have to banish them away. With Annie, when I showed up, this in particular one was interesting just because it was only a single Watcher, but it felt much more intentional with what it was doing. It reminded me a lot of Zane. But this one was not confined to a room. This one was just out. The fact that it was a little more intentional and a little more manipulative was interesting. And again, it wasn't inherently dangerous. Like, Watchers really, from what I know in my experience, will never touch you physically. However, they can become dangerous if you allow them to linger long enough. Now, if you reference Annie's video, she talks a lot about the nightmares that her and her partner at the time had, and about the fights and the arguments that they would get into only in that specific room where the Watcher was residing in. This Watcher was somehow manipulating energies in order to raise those energies and I suppose manifest them into something that it could feed off of, is my theory. But as I've said, it wasn't dangerous as in harming them physically, but mentally and emotionally. Give that a couple days even, if not letting it linger a month or two. That can be so emotionally and mentally taxing. And you can become exhausted. If you're already struggling with something like anxiety, depression, I couldn't imagine dealing with something like this. But luckily, I had the banishing. As I've said before, it was definitely overkill. You really don't need something this big and drastic in order to banish a watcher, even of that caliber. Now, another theory, as I was talking to some peers of mine, they pointed out that watchers tend to linger around large bodies of water, and Annie's cabin, as many of you know, is very close to the ocean. I think that maybe that may have been another reason of why this watcher was so intense, or why it just seemed like it was an evolved version of many of the watchers that I have dealt with prior. Those are kind of a vague oversee of my experience and my knowledge with watchers. My theory with all of them is that there's kind of like a scale, or it's like an evolution, where there are these watchers that are more of kind of like jellyfish. They just kind of float and eat. While they might be uncomfortable to have around and creepy, they're not inherently dangerous, and they're not going to actively do anything other than just make a space unsettling. Where then it goes up to something like Zane, or the watcher that was bothering Annie. These were a little more sentient. They had more of a drive. And again, I wouldn't really say that they are ridiculously intelligent, but they do have a system. So kind of like an insect almost. It's more of just doing the thing they need to do in order to feed, in order to gain that energy. And in their case, it was manipulating and sending some sort of igniting to negative energy so that the people around them, or the space or beings around them, could then manifest more negative energy in order for them to feed. So those are my theories, but that is my over tea video for you for the watchers and a little bit more of an explanation. If I decide to make more videos about spirits that I've come into contact with, maybe I will, but I wouldn't put my money on doing that anytime soon. So try not to get too excited. I hope that you enjoyed this over tea. It has been a while, and I hope to do a little more of these soon, but I'm excited for a couple of videos that I have planned for you in the future. And if you want to see any early access to any of those videos, or exclusive videos, spells that I post, or ask questions to any of the people that I interview here on my channel for an exclusive Q&A video, that is all on my Patreon, plus whatever more I decide to post, along with weekly readings by yours truly. But if you'd like to, check out the Patreon. It really keeps me afloat and allows me to make videos like this. But otherwise, as always, thank you so much for watching. Best of luck, be kind to each other, and may your gods treat you as you've treated others. Happy Hallows Eve.